So when the Raiders fell to the Broncos on Sunday, 24-17, it wasn't an ordinary loss. The Raiders kicked a field goal with no time remaining, changing the final score from 10 points to 7 points. This result changed a lot of sports bettors' final from a win to a loss. Dana. The point spread, the reaction was widespread. So I talked to some folks, heard some sound bites from Pete Carroll. Here it is.
So you play it out, right? Kick it. Try an onside kick it and hope for the Hail Mary. That's what you're telling us, right, Andrew?
Something like that.
I think he's saying there's a different interest now in this play.
And Carlson's kick is good with no time left. So count the three. That makes it a 7-point difference. 24-17 the final.
That's the worst beat of all time. And you have to investigate the Raiders. Investigate the Raiders. What are they doing? What the f***? That's the worst beat of all time. That is cheating. What the f***? Pete Carroll should be in prison. Prison for Pete Carroll. Prison Pete Carroll. Murder Pete Carroll. I want Pete Carroll murdered.
Well, that was Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports completely losing his mind after a late field goal by the Raiders affected many sports bettors depending on which team they bet on, the Raiders or the Broncos. Raiders head coach Pete Carroll was asked about his decision to kick the field goal and the reaction that it has garnered from many sports bettors across the country.
So I was battling with the official, making a plea for, because we saw 8 seconds, 7, which would have given us a chance to kick the field goal, kick an onside kick, and maybe have a second left. And then when it went down to 5, or went down to 3 or whatever they did, and then they put it back to 5 or whatever, then I knew it was going to look stupid. Like you couldn't figure out why we were doing it. So that was just competing all as well it was. But it fans couldn't understand. Like you're asking the question, but there was a real clear thought what we were trying to get done there, just to take it down to the very last click.
Now, after hearing Coach Carroll's reaction, I had to take the temperature of one of the most respected sports bettors I know, Doug Kazarian, the former SportsCenter anchor and forefather, if you will, of ESPN's betting coverage here in Las Vegas. He knows both sides very well because Doug is also a very well-respected sharp bettor. He shared his thoughts on the Raiders' late field goal heard around the world that sparked Barstool's founder, Dave Portnoy's rant.
Yeah, well, there's always going to be people that are upset over bad beats because that's all this is. It's a bad beat. It's a really bad beat. I get it. We've all been there. But there was nothing fishy going on. Now, I understand the critics over the years, even going back to the early 2000s with the Lakers and David Stern. There have been times where it looks like the league is invested in a team doing well, like the Chiefs in recent history. But that's very different than like a crazy outcome of a football play that impacts the point spread. People who run their mouth, and this is the problem with legalization and betting, it's everywhere, and there's people who are, reckless with their comments that say things like fixed and stuff like that. It's just nonsense. What happens in these situations is that silly things or wild things, crazy things happen, and they just happen to affect the point spread. There isn't some elaborate plan or scheme for the sports books to call down and then tell a player or tell a coach that it's just ludicrous. And the reason that is because the books don't really care what happened in that game because they get a lot of two-way action, meaning both sides of the game. So the books don't care. The league doesn't care. They just want above board stuff. Obviously the stuff that's going on with the NBA and everything recently, that's what they care about. So for people to say fixed and things like that, it's just ludicrous. And it's just people being prisoners of the moment. But Brian, you and I live in a world where we're on TV and on radio and things like that, where our words matter. So we're very measured with our words. But the rest of the world doesn't operate like that, even though they have platforms, whether it be social media accounts or whatnot. So we are trained in that regard, but others are not. And when you have influence, it carries weight, but there's nothing shifty or fishy that went on.
I got you. That's a very, very good point. Because we think about what we say before we say it.
Right. Shockingly. That's such a lost art, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm so surprised the fact that there's not a Buffalo Wild Wings button that they have at the stadium that they're pushing down.
Yeah, right. I know, but here's the thing. So when something like this happens, there's degrees of the craziness, right? Yeah. So the point spread and the over-under were impacted. And it was a wild penalty where the clock normally runs out, but the defender, I didn't get a good look at it because the way the camera cut away, I wasn't at the game.
Yeah.
But it seemed like a legitimate penalty or something that's happened before. And in terms of the decision to kick the field goal, it's the right football play. Now, you could say no chance. Yes, of course. But if there were like 10 seconds left instead of 5, you absolutely kick it. Because you only need 1 second to snap the ball, and you can throw a Hail Mary from midfield, but you can't kick a field goal from midfield.
Yeah, definitely reckless with the comments.
Beyond. I was appalled.
It's disturbing when
Yeah,
Dave Portnoy is asking to murder our head coach.
Right.
But
That's
you don't
absurd.
think he was trying to kick the field goal to cover the spread?
Of course not. No, and he